Can go. Go. Go ahead. All right, go. And there we have
Segment one?
the body off the car. Okay.
First thing we do for brake inspection is we have to remove the drum to get inside to have a look. A pair of channel lock pliers will grab the dust cap for removal, and it will bring you into the spindle nut. On the spindle nut, there's a lock screw that holds the spindle nut tight once it's been adjusted properly. To remove the nut, it's 27 millimeters, but the channel locks you have to undo the cap will work dandy to start the nut off. The lock nut on the right side spindle will be right hand thread. On the left side spindle it will be left hand thread. When the nut is removed, the drum will slide off into your hand. Put your thumb up to stop the bearing from falling on the ground and slip the drum off. First thing in the inspection is be able to see everything nice and clean. So a quick blast of brake clean to clean everything off, so we'll actually be able to see what we're looking at. One of the first things you want to look at is make sure that the wheel cylinder itself is not leaking. There's no brake fluid coming out of there. Check the condition of the shoes. Make sure that the shoe is not too close to the steel backing plate, that if it is worn down too far, the shoes will have to be replaced. If it's mid-season, the shoes are probably okay, and adjustment will be what's necessary to get them back up to the drum. The adjuster is at this end. The adjusters are all right-hand thread. When you're adjusting through the hole in the drum, which we'll show you in a minute, you're turning this, which is the nut. So when you push this down, you unthread the bolt. You're turning the nut. You want to unthread it so that the shoe is pushed closer to the drum to take up any gap. Okay.
Go.
Once we've checked inside and everything's clean, and the drum and the inside the drum and the brake shoes, there's enough material left on, we can replace the drum. When we go to put the drum on, we want to inspect inside, make sure that there's no cracks, nothing that's started to go bad on the inside. The inner wheel bearing needs to have grease on it. It doesn't need to be overpacked, but you have to make sure that there's enough grease on it to keep everything lubricated and it's not going to dry out when we're using it. If all of this is good, we can start to put the drum back on. The inner race is still on the spindle. We should be able to slide the drum back on over top of that. Then we need to take a look at our outside bearing before we put it on. Same idea. We want to make sure that it has some...
Okay. Go ahead.
We want to make sure that it has some grease on it, but it doesn't have to be overly packed. Slide the bearing in. The inner race goes in with it. We put our retaining washer on, and we're back to putting our lock nut back on the spindle. Remember, left hand side is left hand thread, right hand side is right hand thread. We bring the nut down until it bottoms on the washer, and then we spin the drum to make sure it's free. The adjustment of the nut is just enough to make sure that there's no free play in the drum. You bring it down until it stops. There's no preload on it, but there's also no free play in the drum. When we're at that point, we can tighten the pinch bolt back up, and we're good on this side for having checked the play of the drum. Okay.
Go.
Once the drum's been put back on in place, we can adjust the shoes out to make sure that we get the shoes as close to the drum as possible. The idea here is you want to bring the shoe out to the drum, then back it off slightly. In the process of doing this, you have to pump the pedal to make sure that the shoes get centered in the drum. But you have to make sure that all the drums are on the car before you start to pump the pedal. So what we'll do now is we'll make an adjustment on the screw. We'll turn it. Jeff will pump it, make sure we're centered. Then we'll go to the top shoe. We'll adjust it. Again, we'll pull it to make sure it's centered. And when we're close, nice and free, we can hear just a very slight tick of it going past. We're good. The shoes are brought out as far as they can be, and there's no drag on the drum. It's all good.
Excellent.
Now that we have the brake shoes adjusted out to the drums, the next thing we can do is bleed the system to make sure we get rid of any air bubbles or anything in it before you start. Make sure that the master cylinder is up to its full level. There'll be a master cylinder for the front brakes, a master cylinder for the rear brakes, and a master cylinder for the clutch. Once we know that we've got fluid in the master cylinder, we can do the brake bleed, which you'll need a hand, you'll need somebody to help you out with this, and it'll make the job that much easier.
Excellent.
Okay, a bleeder bottle will be required to bleed the system so that the fluid gets caught. You have your partner pump the pedal up.
Okay, so hold on just a second. Partner, put the pedal.
Partner holds pressure on the pedal. With the wrench, you crack the bleeder screw loose and let the fluid run out, watching through the tube to make sure that see if there's any air bubbles or not, and then you close it back up. If you go through this process about 3 times, you'll empty out the fluid that's in the wheel cylinder. There'll be fresh fluid inside the wheel cylinder for the next session out. Make sure that as you're pumping this, the master cylinder never gets down to the bottom of the master cylinder, or we'll end up pumping air through the system.